Well, I think it's time to start our session. Welcome to the Relational Matters Archive conversation series. Great to be back again here. It took a bit longer than we thought after our last conversation that kicked off our second season, but it's wonderful to have you here. And most of all, of course, also to you, Nina Lykke. Thank you for being with us today to continue our conversations in the Relational Matters Archive. Before we start our conversation, let me give as always a few introductory remarks. First of all, my name is Katrin Thiele. I'm one of the initiators of the Relational Matters Archive, and I'm otherwise teaching and researching in the context of the Grad Agenda program at Utrecht University in the Netherlands. And together with us here is also Ida Hillerop Hansen, a recently completed PhD researcher from Utrecht University, with whom I invented and started the Relational Matters Archive last year. And I'm most happy that we continue to do this project together. Ida will oversee all technical details for today's session and also moderate the session's chat, which can be used by all live participants. And we hope, dear live participants, that you engage with our conversation at the end also then with some comments. But Ida, you say more about this, so please continue from here maybe.
Yes, hello everyone. So with the Relational Matters Archive, we have been running a series of conversations for about a year now. This is the second season and we are so pleased to have Nina here. The conversations are recorded and they will be available online on the archive's webpage, where you can also go and learn more about the project. So each conversation is loosely structured around the same 3 questions, and it will last up until 45 minutes. And then we'll have a Q&A for 10 to 15 minutes. And we encourage everyone attending to raise your questions or share your questions in the chat. And then I will post them into the conversation. Yeah, with that, I'll leave the floor to Katrin and to Nina.
Thank you. Let me first of all remind ourselves once more about the aim of the Relational Matters Archive, the work it hopes to do, and then also to introduce to you all here today's interlocutor with a few more words. The Relational Matters Archive aims to collect insight and divergent practices dealing with relationality as a starting point for research, inquiries, and ways of living. The archive is part of a project in which 2 claims are interwoven in the attempt to engage with and attune ourselves to today's planetary condition. On the one hand, an engagement with relational matters, which expresses an insistence on the interactive and messily entangled condition of our times. And on the other hand, the statement that relation matters meant as an ethico-political wager to become more literate and more carefully attuned to what entanglement as living condition implies. That is, what does such a claim ask from us when living it? It's important to emphasize that to take a relational point of departure does not propose relationality as a solution in itself. Rather, these conversations around relational matters want to inquire what relationality means in specific contexts and on different scales, and how a relational approach could offer significant insights to what's happening around, amongst, and within us. I look very much forward now to a conversation on these matters with Nina Lykke. Once more, Nina, welcome, and it's so good to see you here again on screen. And to say a few more words about today's interlocutor to you all, Nina Lykke is a queer feminist philosopher, poet, and writer, and she's also Professor Emerita of Gender Studies at Linköping University, Sweden, and adjunct professor at Aarhus University in Denmark. Nina is also co-founder of the International Network of Queer Death Studies, and over her long career, she published numerous books, monographs, and edited volumes, and wrote many articles and book chapters. Far too many to name them all here, but to name only her monographs, we can think of Cosmodolphins from 2000, then Feminist Studies, A Guide to Intersectional Theory, Methodology, and Writing from 2010, and now most recently the auto-phenomenographic poetic book, Vibrant Death from 2022. Nina's intellectual interest and work span an incredible amount of thematic and theoretical horizons, and all of them make her such a wonderful presence in the Relational Matters Archive. Her eco-critical meditations on queer widowhood developed also from a spiritual, materialist, feminist and immanent feminist perspective and immanent philosophies. Then her thinking about questions of death, dying and mourning approach from a Spinozian inflected posthumanism. And also a continued project in my eyes to bring together queer feminist materialist and decolonial perspectives in engaging with human and more than human worlds. Her most current research focuses on cancer cultures or cancer culture, critical patienthood studies, and the geopolitics of cancer. And I'm sure this will be yet another endeavor in which your work, Nina, will inspire many of us to carefully think with the, and I quote already from the text that you gave us to read, the abyssal intimacies of cancer, I wanted to say, in human and or as ecological entanglements. And thereby will shift what we think about cancer and how to live and die with it. I hope that I warmed us up all for sufficiently now for the conversation to begin. And as usual, we just begin with the first question that in this archive on relational matters gives us guidance. I hope you're ready, Nina, to start this with me. And the first question is, how does relationality actually figure in your work? From which angle are you engaging with relational matters?
Thank you for the question, and also, first of all, thank you so much for the invitation. I've been looking very much forward to this conversation because, of course, of relationality in the different meanings you spoke about. It is so politically and ethically important. So, yeah. So I'm looking a lot forward to this, and I would say. First of all, on a very, you might say, practical level, relationality has always played an enormously big role in my in my research and activism, and I have, in a way, when I look, I mean, I've been around for many years and started publishing and being an activist already in the 1970s. I mean. Imagine, it's really long ago, and I have always not only done activist and political work collectively. I mean that, but I have also really been doing research and writing collectively. So much so that when I was going to write my PhD dissertation. That my and I had planned to do it together with my lesbian life partner Mette Brill, because we were doing we had already done some other research together, and then I was advised to do this one on my own independently, to show that it was that I actually could do things on my own, so to speak. So I have a few things that I have done on my own, but I have really, if you look at my list of publication, you will actually, and both my edited work and my authored work, so to speak, that I have really done a lot of collaborative research. And I do actually also, I also wanted to mention here. I mean that I do think that co-authorship is really important. You mentioned the importance of bridging the gaps between decolonial, queer, post-human work, and I have fairly recently also been doing co-authored work. Together with indigenous women, and I really think that co-authorship is in that relationship also a way of, I mean, of somehow transgressing the model, if you want, the paradigm of or trying to transgress the paradigm of Western people writing about others out there somehow extracting the work and affectivity and activism into your own research practice. And of course, it's difficult not to do that. But I really do think that co-authorship is really, and I mean, has become even more important in this kind of relationships as well. So that's one on a very practical, but also political and ethical level. One answer to your question. I have more. Do you want to jump in or?
No, please go ahead.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit more about this.
Okay.
But I like very much how you start with the practical, and I'm sure we come back to this. But go on, please.
Yeah. Okay. Because what I'm doing in terms of in my current research, I have focused very much on what I call a compassionate synthesizing companionship. And what do I mean by that? It's very much related to my research on death and mourning, and related to the mourning of my passed away lesbian and queer masculine life partner, but also to my being an advocate for the microalgae diatoms. And I have developed this idea about a compassionate synthesizing companionship, both in relation to my work with the mourning of my passed away partner, but also the ways in which I have somehow transformed that work into advocacy for these microalgae diatoms, and the relationship between the diatoms and my deceased partner is that these microalgae, there are a lot of these microalgae of the belonging to the species diatoms. They have built enormously amazing, fantastic, beautiful cliffs 55 million years ago at the place where my partner's ashes are scattered. And the waters in this place are also abounding with living diatoms. And I have somehow transformed my mourning as something which is only related to the memories of the subject that was, the body that was my amazing partner. I've somehow extended my mourning, but also my establishing of a new kind of relationality to the assemblages of which my partner's ashes are now part, because that's somehow a material way of establishing a new kind of relationship. And I have developed my ideas about companionship through this kind of extension of my queer feminine, queer femme relationship to my queer masculine partner. Somehow, how can I extend that to these assemblages with which her ashes are mixed up?
Great. I would like to maybe one thing that I find in what you're saying, so is that the way you already address what you're doing in this current research, when you say compassionate synthesizing companionship, there is of course already in those words a lot of relational force, so to speak. And that I find very rich, because what one can see in your work really is and that is something I would like to hear maybe a little bit more, how you actually make that connection, or how you, not even connection, it seems that you would move from A to B, but actually you don't. I think I understand it a little bit differently. I think that you do not go from the question of death in a human sense, or from your deceased partner towards the algae and the more than human, but somehow you'll manage to bring those together on some level, which is, I find, I think that there's on the one hand a certain philosophical, I think, a certain philosophical angle in it. And I know, of course, that you are also working a lot with philosophies of immanence, or like more like nature culture thinking as such, so to speak. But on the other hand, and that I find important is also that you practice that. It's also a going somewhere and kind of really walking or seeing and living through this. So I would like to hear even a little bit more how this clear focus on both being interested in ecology and being interested in working with mourning in death, how you connect the two things in your, how do you respond to this question? I don't want to speak too long, so to speak. Anything would just be interesting, a little bit more of that.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, you're totally right. I mean, it's not a move from the relationship I had with my partner when she lived to something else. I mean, it's totally an entanglement, and I actually am very focused on the ways in which my partner's ashes are mixed with the diatomaceous sand at this in this seabed. So it is kind of an assemblage which now is both my partner's ashes, which is the material. Death transforms you, and my partner has through cremation been transformed into ashes, and these ashes are mixed with the diatomaceous sand in this place. So when I swim in the waters there, I'm actually swimming with the diatoms, and I'm swimming with the oysters and the fish and the seagrass and whatever is there. But I'm swimming with these assemblages, of which my partner's ashes are part. So in that sense, they are. I mean, it's an entanglement, and as I do think that. And I have somehow developed my ideas about queer ecology. I mean, I've been interested in the ecology of the place where my partner's ashes are scattered since the 1970s, because there has been, a lot of catastrophes as everywhere, fish death and algae death, and a lot of things going on. I'm really now engaged in a totally different way in these ecological issues there. Before it was, more of a cognitive thing. I think now it's really a corpo-affective relationship, a very bodily relationship for me, I do think that I tend to think that it's in a way, even though I don't like doing too many looking at, just saying, okay, it's the same as some indigenous people did there or whatever. I think you should be very wary of these kind of comparisons. Still, I was very taken aback, and I've been writing about that in my book, Rather Than Death, as well. The ways in which indigenous people in Australia, in some places in Australia, are really doing these really, strong, fiery dances in the sand, in ancestral places where the ashes and the bones of the ancestors, of course, are part of the sand, are part of the desert, are part of the beach there. And by dancing, I mean, very quickly, and I mean, fury, etc. Then of course you get to sweat a lot, and when you sweat, of course, what happens? Then the dust will somehow mix into your skin, meaning that the living and the dead is somehow exchanging, not only on a spiritual, I mean, on a spiritual level, but also on a very spirit mattering level, on a very embodied level. And I do think that's also what plays a role for me while swimming in these places, and that it's so it's not only a relationship to my partner and not only a relationship to the diatoms, but to this, I mean, very physical mix that has entangled, if you want.
Wonderful, because now I think we you brought it very nicely together, and also together in that what I know, what you said, you started with practice, but it is much more better now to say how you said it, as corpo affective, really, really swimming in it. I mean, and that is really something that I like very much, is how you approach this first question. I know that you have photos that you would like to show us. Is that the right moment, or do we want to first go to the second question? What do you think? Do you want to first speak a little bit more about methodology, what it does, or do you want to are we at a good moment?
Perhaps it could be a good moment to actually show some of my photos from this place. Now I've been talking a lot about it, so perhaps Ida, you said you would help with the technical things here, because we've had a bit of trouble with Teams. I'm more used to Zoom, so well. These are a picture from the museum at this island Fur, where you can see the colors of these cliffs that are made of diatomite, and diatomite is an earth thing that is made by fossilized diatoms that were fossilized 55 million years ago. So these are the colors, just so that you can see. But now I will, the next one, show you the cliffs. So please go to the next one. Yeah. So this is where the cliffs, the foot of the cliffs, is meeting the sea, and you can see these really strong yellow colors. And perhaps I think we should just go quickly through them. So again, you can see the yellow and the white and the black and the red, the red colors. We are closer to the cliff wall here, and now we are a bit further away, and as you can see, the further away you get, the more the colors are blurred into each other, but you can still see how it changes from red to yellow to white to black, and all this is, and here we have another one, which is where you can see the green colors, and I think the last one we have is the blue one, isn't it? Or yeah, the blue one. So it's and I mean, I think it's I mean, I'm very attracted to this place, and it's a very spiritual place, I would say. But yeah, but I hope that you just that I've given you just a small glimpse of how it looks.
Wonderful, yes. Maybe that exactly is a good transition also to the question that we want to continue with, namely, as we get a real, I think a real feel also of what you think with this, which methodological shifts do you see emerging or do you see happening from a relational approach in research, but also maybe living and practice and activism?
I mean, for me, I think two shifts have been. I mean, in my research, two shifts have been really crucial, and I'll talk about it and also try to somehow scale out to what's happening, also not only in my research but also more broadly, perhaps. And for me, what you already in your presentation talked about as as autophenomenography has been very important, and also poetic and artistic creative writing modes. Autophenomenography is autoethnography with a phenomenological approach, meaning that instead of looking at broader cultural issues, you do autoethnography on very close to corporal affectivity and to embodiment, to feelings, etc. To make a long story very short, I do not do, or I do also more what I would call humanist autophenomenography, and the people who developed autophenomenography, among others, sports scientist called Jacqueline Allen Collinson, have been doing very wonderful work on long distance running, and written diaries on long distance running, both the pleasures, the nice feelings, but of course also the sexual harassment that happens when you have, or can happen if you're a long distance runner, especially with a female body, and I think that work has been very inspiring for me. However, what I'm doing is inspired by post-human phenomenology, and the post-human phenomenology, among others, of Estrida Naimanis, who have been looking into the ways in which we are bodies of water, which of course goes far beyond the ways in which phenomenology is only looking at a strictly subjective human level, because I mean, obviously it's not only humans that are bodies of water, it's everyone, or more or less on the planet. So I have somehow taken this post-human phenomenological approach, looking at what I share, for example, with the microalgae. What do I share with such critters that are so distant from me? And one of the things I have focused on is that we are mortal. Another thing is that we are organisms that are not, I mean, also dependent on water, but Estrida already did that, but also dependent on an oxygen-rich environment. So, and what does that mean? What does that mean in terms of algae death by suffocation, for example? So I'm somehow posing these kind of questions, and looking into the ways in which I can synthesize, I can bodily empathize. Now I come back to this word synthesizing again. The ways in which I can bodily empathize in terms of thinking about, for example, suffocation, where I take, of course, I think all humans have some kind of feeling, what does it mean to suffocate? But my partner had, among others, a lung cancer, so therefore the issue of suffocation was coming up, so to speak, more dramatically. So I have somehow tried to enter into this kind of thinking and feeling and writing autophenomeноgraphically, for example, about suffocation, and how does that how can I talk about sharing that with the diatoms? Actually, a lot of diatoms are, it's an ecological problem, because in a lot of coastal waters, among others, 95% of the coastal waters in Denmark are dying, and everybody is, including Greenpeace, is talking a lot about the ways in which fish and plants die due to oxygen depletion. However, my point is, from my autophenomenographical point of view and the synthesizing that I try to develop, that the algae, they are actually dying not from exactly the same kind of suffocation, but they are also aerobic beings. Most beings are aerobic, meaning that they need some kind of closeness to oxygen, and that goes for algae as well. So that's the way I work with post-human phenomenology and post-human autophenomenography, instead of just staying with a humanist autophenomenography, which of course can be a fine thing to do. And the other thing is poetic creative writing, but I'll let you in before going to that.
I think it leads to the second part that you want to say about the poetic, because what seems to shift for you then is really, with that methodology, you really get into a learning of, indeed, what you say, sympathizing or empathizing, or really feeling alongside different, different embodiments, or different ways of living, and that really happens to you by really taking this autophenomenographic approach. And I think it has maybe to do also now in this practice that you are also using it in a poetic style, or kind of a different, it's not like only a conceptual way of talking about that, but really doing something that transforms you also, so that this sympathizing or empathizing with others that are seem far away, or that don't seem similar to a human environment, or human embodiment, that connection or that entanglement can be made. So please, if tell us something about the that element that makes you shift also in that sense. I think has a lot to do with the poetic.
I just wanted to underline that it's where this word it's not sympathizing, it's symphysizing, and
also, sorry,
yeah, SYMPHYSIS, and it's actually coming from a post-human philosopher called Rav Akampora, who and I think this is mentioned in the article, so people, if you're interested, you can see the reference there. But he developed the noun symphysis, which means feeling together with the body. I mean, the physis, the Greek word for body. So it's symphysis together with the body, which is a point, yeah, which is a point.
Sympathizing has already two entities to begin with, and I thought of maybe speaking about it, but it's perfect that you're telling me.
And of course it's difficult to hear, especially because my English is perhaps not that good pronounced. I don't know, but therefore I just wanted. I'm not I mean, English is my second language, but symphysizing, and I have then taken Rav Akampora's noun symphysis, together with the body, feeling together with the body, and made a verb out of it, symphysizing. And symphysizing, I think Akampora has a very interesting example, I mean, to explain it, which I think is good to think with. He talks about co-experiencing the ways in which, when you look at horror films, then you can feel it in your body. I mean, it's not just something that's happening in your imagination. You can really feel it in that you. I mean, that your stomach is clenching, and you're getting your breathing is getting more. If you, so you're getting bodily afraid together with the victim, whatever, on the screen. So that's an example of, and I think it's a very good way of talking of explaining this synthesizing, that you actually bodily engage with somebody else. So yeah, and that is, and then going. So that's what I mean by synthesizing, and I really think that this bodily corpo-affective aspect is really important, both in a humanist sense, but also very much in a post-humanist sense, where it's of course is I mean, way more difficult, because how do you actually synthesize with an algae? I mean, how do you do that? I mean, there's a lot of difficult questions in that, philosophical as well as practical and spiritual, but this is somehow where I do think that art and poetry is somehow coming in as helpful, not in the sense that I do not ever think that of course we cannot, as humans, just jump out of our human skin and pretend that we can feel like an algae. That would be, or other non-human critters. I think that would be really a violent act of anthropomorphization. So that's for sure not what I'm saying. But I do think that poetic language and the struggle with poetic language, I mean, really trying to work with poetic language and with deflating the poetic eye of etc. And try to create a sensuous language which somehow tries very humbly to tap into what does it mean to be a different body, what does it mean to co-experience in this synthesizing way. And I do think that poetic language and artistic language, dance as well. I mean, there are actually an artist called Sarah Blissett is dancing together with algae. So there are different ways, different artistic ways. But I do think that these artistic ways of including poetry, which is my primary way of trying to do artistic work, is really an enormously useful and good tool to try to do that. That's where I really think more, I mean, conceptual work has its shortcomings.
Exactly, and I comes back. I mean, that from again what you also started with in this conversation, really, that you're living this or practicing this or approaching your work also with, always in that way of relationality. I think, as much as you are, I think a writer also that has a lot to say about philosophical concepts and about exactly how you now emphasized also synthesizing and what this means and how this comes together. But indeed, it is really totally related with other aspects, be it spiritual, be it practical, or be it poetic, and maybe poetic in all of those senses.
For sure, and I definitely think that I mean, it's not. I mean, for me, it's definitely not an either or. I do think that, I mean, I have a deep respect for philosophical concepts. Not all of them. I think there's a lot of crap out there which we need to be critical of. But I do think that there's a lot of good work as well. And this concept of synthesizing has been very important for me in terms of actually reflecting on what is going on here. How do I avoid anthropomorphizing, etc.
No, and I think what I share very much, I mean, what I share in that this is a resonance that sometimes, exactly concepts can really lead to a practicing differently, just because they lead us to other ways of experiencing. But we also need something else with which we make this maybe less, less just only conceptual, but something that fills it up.
And
talk.
Yeah. I just wanted to say that I really like to see the two. I mean, philosophical concepts and poetic, artistic ways of articulating as really on the same level. There's not a hierarchy between them. They're really on the same level, and they can do different things.
Exactly, and do different things, and yeah, but they can also be exactly. They are on the same level, so that sometimes it's really also inspiring to start maybe with the concept. To have something on the conceptual level, but I think as well that the shifting that we are just talking about, the methodological shifting operation, there is something coming else into this, how such a conceptual understanding is lived out, or how it is expressed, or what it wants to do, that does something more than just now knowing the right terminology, or approaching it from just a philosophical side.
And I do think that it actually goes the other way around as well, because I do think that there are I'm also somehow reflecting on the miraculous experiences that I had in this place and in relation to this place, and I would never have dared to go into that from the philosophical side. So I think that the materiality of the place and the vibrancy of the place, and my willingness to immerse myself in the place and do poetic reflections on it, created new ways and asked me to philosophically think about miracles, which I've done in my book. So I think it works both ways.
Perfect. Wonderful ending to the second question. We have not that much time left, but I know that question 3 is maybe we can get to it in a little bit of shorter way, so that we keep to our times. But with all of that now, where do you see dangers, tensions, or limitations in taking relationality as a starting point for your research endeavors or practice or praxis?
First of all, when I just wanted to say, I already said it to you when we talked before, that when I saw question 3, okay, are there any dangers? Are there any problems? Are there any limitations here? I definitely think that I do think that there are somehow two what you might say, to somehow opposite traps that this synthesizing approach and to a planetary ethics of companionship that I'm arguing for, that it's very important to take into account, and which could end up as limitations. And one is that synthesizing could really lead to very easily into an assimilation into sameness, and anthropomorphizing, for example, what does it mean that I shift in my poem Algae Chant? What does it mean that I shift the poetic position of enunciation from a human I to an algae we? To really make sure or take care, be attentive to not ending up in assimilation into sameness. And the other, if you want, opposite in a way, trap would be to take a totally purist stance, which would say that, okay, we are humans, we are our senses and brains, bodies, etc., are crafted in a specific way, and therefore we will never ever be able to to transgress this abyss that Derrida is talking about. And I do think that would somehow keep us into human exceptionalism, even if it's from a very humble position where you say, okay, but the algae, etc., out there might really have much more, much better grasp on how to live healthily with the planet, etc. Even if you take this kind of very humble position, then you somehow would confirm a human exceptionalism if you somehow do not dare take the step of thinking about sympathizing. So I do think that these and these limitations are and traps, if you want, that are things that I think that you need to. I mean, it's not a tick box. Not done. I'm not a purist. I'm not assimilating. I think you'll have to do it all the time. And every time I write a poem, I'm really thinking about this. On the level of each word, in a way.
Much that you say, speaking about traps here, and translating also for you this last question, because I very much also like that you on the one hand, when you speak of synthesizing, for example, I very much share the what I would maybe say a danger of too easy assimilation. Mm-hmm. And I really also find this also when we hear your poems, or when we read them in the book, that one can see how much you be aware of that you're not just changing, you're not just exchanging, but you really move somehow. The poem moves in a different, it moves somewhere else in a different perspective or some different entry point, so that you are, so that you don't, that it doesn't become an assimilation. So I agree very much that is also something that I think at the very beginning of this project was very much the idea with this third part. Maybe not to think that this is the solution, if you can, synthesize, then everything is fine, so to speak. Yeah. But the other thing is as important, I think so too, the question of being humble and saying, yes, we can try a relation, but we have to always keep to ourselves, because of course, that also, I would also think there are, that this is, avoiding that there is what can be called a responsibility. There is exactly that what you're saying, the material assemblage that you're swimming in, and that creates not only experiences but also responsibilities, or questions of ethics, questions of ecology, questions of all that, and questions also of transforming in the way how to mourn and how to live. So I like this very much.
Okay, and I would add sensibility. I think it's both a question of responsibility but I think it's also a question of sensibility. I mean, and I do think that poetically working through synthesizing is somehow sharpening your sensibility, and thereby also making better grounds for responsibility.
Nice. A wonderful final sentence, I think, for us too, because I think we have reached our times. Okay. So there is still time for some questions in the chat. So, Ida, will you explain once more to everybody?
Yeah, I'll just encourage people once more to share their questions in the chat. And maybe while you do that, I have a question.
Exactly, please start.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for this exchange. It was really exciting to listen to, and really nice to also get to see the photos, Nina. They are just beautiful. I have so many questions. I'll just choose one, actually, because you come right at the tail of the conversation we were having with Denise last time. And we spent some time talking about what her sort of notion of imaging the world otherwise would actually look like, more sort of practically speaking, or in practice. And I just, I'm so inspired, Nina, by your poetic practice. And I'm actually really just curious to hear more about what it feels to be the sort of corpo-affective side or experience of it. Because when you read the poems, it's very clear on a sort of narrative or textual level that there is a shift in positions and such, but it's also a very clearly understandable narrative or edited in some way. It's and then I guess I'm just curious to hear you talk about the experience, the corpo-affective experience of engaging in poetic practice. Also, just where does a poet or where does that practice begin? I know you also write just as a broader practice. How does it unfold? Yeah.
I would also mention I really like reading my poems aloud, and I mean, so I do also poetry readings, performance lectures, if you want, and I do think that it gives that this kind of performance gives I mean, an extra embodied corpo-affective layer, both for me, but also perhaps for those listening. That the affectivity is amplified by the reading. But I would say that it I mean that it has been really a part of my morning and a part of my unfolding of my spiritual material practicing of encountering my beloved in her new assemblages in a new way, to do it through poetry. So in that sense, the poetry is also a practice. I mean, to write the poetry is also a practice. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so there's one question in the chat here. So, and I'm just going to read it out loud. Thanks so much for this wonderful conversation, Nina and Katrin. Nina, can you expand a bit about on the role of images in your work in relation to what you've discussed here today?
And now I'm not quite sure whether it's inner images. I mean, images articulated in words, which I do in the poems, or whether it's also. I mean, it can relate to that, but of course also to the photos that I showed, and I think, I mean, and images are for me very important in both respects. And then I can see that you who asked the question, that you are asking about the photographs. I definitely did not. I mean, when I started out on this project, I somehow have. I didn't consider myself as a poet, but I had been writing poetry in earlier times, so it was more close to something that I somehow identified with. But I was totally sure that I was not a visual artist in any way. Nevertheless, it really, as much as it became part of my spiritual material practice, to write poems and amplify the experiences I had when walking on these cliffs and under the cliffs, etc., as I describe it in the VIII poem, in the article. It became as much an important part of my practice to actually use my my iPhone and just do click, and in the end and I just did it because I thought that everything there was so amazing, and I just wanted to bring it with me somehow. But it became very, very much part of my amplifying practice, and it turned out that as my poems, which audiences responded very strongly and in many amazing ways, which somehow made me feel that there were important things in my text. Then audiences also actually responded to my visuals as well. So I actually also started perhaps to think, okay, perhaps I'm not only a poet philosopher, because I'm perhaps also some kind of an artist philosopher. Could we talk about? I mean, but I'm very humble because I'm just. But I'm collaborating with visual artists. Lykke is one of them. Katja Aklat is another, and and they both Lykke and Katja have also confirmed me in that these visuals can be seen as part of this spiritual / artistic practice. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Nina, for this wonderful answer.